what you have here is the makings of another blow off top, because you're going to have lots of companies all over the world engaging in this strategy, taking out debt, buying Bitcoin. You're going to see a typical correction of 10 or 15% become a 30, 40, 50% correction because of the unwinding of all these corporate treasury companies. Could be the story of the next pullback. And Saylor himself has said Bitcoin will go from 220 or 250 back to 180. Like, he's already anticipating this. And then the cycle will begin again. This idea that we will no longer, we've broke free of the 4-year cycle, right? We've said that at the top of every 4-year cycle, that we've broke free from the 4-year cycle. And then we have a big drawdown.
Bitcoin's mission to break free from state control is colliding with corporate ambition, setting the stage for one of the most powerful financial shifts of our time. Max Keiser reveals that Bitcoin's core mission is to separate money from the state, a revolutionary shift he compares to the separation of church and state, one that could spark a new era of financial freedom and self-sovereignty. He warns, however, that corporate Bitcoin buying can unintentionally reverse this mission by reuniting money and state through equity ownership. A central figure in this transformation is Michael Saylor, whose bold decision in 2020 to deploy $500 million from MicroStrategy's balance sheet into Bitcoin fundamentally changed corporate finance. Instead of relying on stock buybacks, Saylor pioneered a strategy of issuing stock and bonds to accumulate more Bitcoin, turning dilution into accretion. Today, this bold strategy is paying off. Saylor recently revealed that his company is minting $500 million a day as Bitcoin inches toward the $100,000 milestone for the first time in history. However, Keiser cautions that not every company can replicate this model successfully. Some firms may sell their Bitcoin if their stock trades below book value, a move that could trigger sharp corrections of 30 to 50%. He believes this dynamic could shape the next explosive Bitcoin cycle, massive rallies followed by steep drawdowns, once again proving that Bitcoin's history tends to rhyme. The Bitcoin revolution is accelerating fast. Share your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more market insights, and stay ahead of the next big move.
Well, the primary use case of Bitcoin is separating money from state. So when corporations are buying Bitcoin and you're buying shares in those corporations, you're reuniting money and state. So it's going backwards from the primary mission, right? The vector that it's on is to separate money from state. And it's as profound a change to society as separating the state from the church, right? That was an amazing leap forward for humanity in a lot of ways, and gave us the Enlightenment. And separating money from state is sets the stage for something similar to happen to society, a huge leap forward of self-sovereignty, and that would be self-hodling Bitcoin. On the corporate treasury front, you've got a lot of companies with a lot of cash who are buying a lot of Bitcoin. The thing about Michael Saylor is that back in 2020, he had $500 million on the balance sheet. And he could have done what every single CEO in America has been doing for 20 or 30 years, and that is to buy back his own stock. That would boost earnings per share, which would make his stock options go higher, and he could make a lot of money that way. But he took the very bold step of trying something no one had tried before and done before. He put that $500 million into Bitcoin, and he set in motion something that has profoundly changed corporate finance. So the melting ice cube was addressed. He went from the problems with fiat money to Bitcoin. Then the next step was, I can actually go into the market and sell stock, and I can sell bonds, and I can use the proceeds to buy Bitcoin. So then we went into this idea of dilution equals accretion. Because normally when a company sells stocks or bonds, you're diluting the earnings per share, and therefore the multiple would drop down, and so would the price. He's saying, no, actually dilution, and with our company, it's accretive, because we're going to instantly buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is going up forever. So that's the beginning of his at the market stock sales, etc. And stock is looking good. It's getting a lot of attention. Then he goes into another phase, which is these convertible preferreds and other kinds of stock offerings that would appeal to different pockets of money. Some are looking for volatility, some are looking for income. And he had the biggest IPO of 2025 so far with one of his spinoffs. And that money is going into the balance sheet, and he's buying Bitcoin. And I think that Michael Saylor is a one-off, just like President Bukele is a one-off. I think that these other companies that have come along that are trying to do what he's doing they don't think they know what he's doing, but they think they know what they're doing and what he's doing, and they're not necessarily going to be successful at it. And they've already said that if their stock price trades at a discount to their Bitcoin position, they're going to sell their Bitcoin and buy back their stock. So it's going to unwind those positions. Where they don't think Michael Saylor and Strategy would ever do that, but these newer companies have already said they would do that. So what you have here is the makings of another blow off top, because you're going to have lots of companies all over the world engaging in this strategy, taking out debt, buying Bitcoin. You're going to see a typical correction of 10 or 15% become a 30, 40, 50% correction because of the unwinding of all these corporate treasury companies. Could be the story of the next pullback. And Saylor himself has said Bitcoin will go from 220 or 250 back to 180. Like, he's already anticipating this. And then the cycle will begin again. This idea that we will no longer, we've broke free of the 4-year cycle, right? We've said that at the top of every 4-year cycle, that we've broke free from the 4-year cycle. And then we have a big drawdown. And people, it's like, oh, why didn't I realize that nothing changes and everything is always the history rhymes over and over and over again. So as a Bitcoiner, I like to see the demand for Bitcoin.
A new financial era is unfolding as nations move beyond fiat and begin anchoring their economies to Bitcoin. Max Keiser is once again drawing attention to a global monetary shift as Bitcoin dipped to $109,800. He highlights how Bitcoin's growing influence at the sovereign level is reshaping the future of global finance. At the heart of this transformation is Nayib Bukele, whose leadership has positioned El Salvador as a global Bitcoin model, inspiring other nations to follow suit. Countries like Panama are moving to join what Keiser calls the axis of Bitcoin, while Pakistan has made history by announcing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, signaling a long-term commitment to the asset with the declaration, "We will never sell." This development comes as sovereign wealth funds, hedge funds, and institutional investors accelerate their Bitcoin allocations, embedding it deeper into the global financial system. Keiser believes the traditional central banking and fiat currency models are approaching their endgame, clearing the path for Bitcoin to rise as the new global reserve standard. With a fixed supply of just 21 million coins and a potential $400 trillion capital inflow, he foresees explosive upside potential. Still, Keiser warns of sharp corrections ahead, setting the stage for Bitcoin's next defining cycle. Let's get back to video.
Well, having President Bukele as president of Bitcoin country is helpful because he's the most popular leader in the region. He's the most popular leader in dozens of countries. When they ask them, who's your favorite leader, they'll say President Bukele. And President Bukele, of course, is associated with Bitcoin. So that opens the doors. And, we recently met up with the folks in Panama. And they are now moving toward what I call the axis of Bitcoin, right? Central American companies and countries that are coming into Bitcoin. We had a meeting with the financial minister of Pakistan a few weeks ago with the president. And the news came out shortly thereafter that they're now exploring Bitcoin strategic reserve. So every country in the world, every sovereign wealth fund in the world, and sovereign wealth funds, the biggest ones are the biggest part of a few of these countries, they're now exploring Bitcoin or investing in Bitcoin. So it is now finding its way into the sovereign level. So Bitcoin is definitely embedded in the sovereign level, and they are increasing their allocation, just like Larry Fink, I believe, allocation went from 1% to 5%. Now he's talking 15% on portfolios. So the hedge funds, the managed money world, they're upping their allocations. The sovereigns are getting involved. Sovereign wealth funds are getting involved. So it's already on the sovereign level. It's already working its way in. We believe we have a blueprint for this that was developed in El Salvador. The legal blueprint, the communications, how to manage it. So that's something that we've talked to Panama about. Like, here are the steps we took to get to El Salvador level. We think El Salvador is the first country out of the fourth turning, in large part because you've got President Bukele plus Bitcoin. So, we're already in the good times phase, and other countries are entering the bad times. In the United States, of course, they are very involved with Bitcoin thanks to the orange pilling efforts of Bitcoin Magazine. in the Trump administration and family. So they are definitely on the Bitcoin board. And so they are obviously a big player. They're probably the biggest of the G7 that's involved in Bitcoin. And, I think you're going to see some news coming out of the Mideast. It makes perfect sense. They've got all that energy that they would want to also be in Bitcoin. We get some news still coming out from that region. And so it's already happening on the sovereign level. Well, I didn't say 2025. I just said it's in play.
Right.
2.2 million.
Thank you for correcting me.
Is in play. It's easy to see where this is going, and so it doesn't seem like a stretch. The total addressable market is 400 trillion. The total addressable all the fiat money world, it's literally a Ponzi scheme, and you can't taper a Ponzi scheme. And it's starting to unwind. Now, I believe, an effort that they believe in Washington and elsewhere, they're going to keep this Ponzi scheme going. I think we're at the end game. I think they're at the end game for both the central bank model and the nation state model. After 300 years, I think this is all coming apart. And Bitcoin will emerge as the global reserve standard. And so that means, and everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. So, I think Michael Saylor has a $13 million per Bitcoin prediction out there. And I can see how you can get there, because you're talking about squeezing 400 trillion into 21 million units of Bitcoin, right? The price discovery tells you where the price is going, and they can't make any more up. So it's not hard to come up with these numbers, and we've been right. I mean, the only really important price prediction I ever made was in 2011 at the first Bitcoin conference in Prague, when Bitcoin was a few dollars. And I said in my speech to the conference that if this works as an asset class and captures 1% or more percent of global forex, then this is a $100,000 per coin asset. Okay, that's really the only important prediction I think that I made, because obviously if you were riding it from $1 to 100,000, you got the lion's share of gains in this asset. And to give credit, it was also Rick Falkvinja who started the Swedish Pirate Party, who was also at the event, who also did a presentation along these lines as well. So he was really also really seeing the potential of Bitcoin at that time as an asset class and being competitive in the global asset world, where I know as a stockbroker, you have a fiduciary responsibility to at least consider these assets. And if it pops up on your Bloomberg machine, it's going to gain traction, and the market's huge, and the price is going to go up. That's it.
Bitcoin is rapidly evolving from a disruptive idea into a dominant force reshaping global finance. What started as a mission to separate money from state control has now become a coordinated movement spanning nations, corporations, and institutions. Bold corporate strategies and sovereign adoption are accelerating this transition as countries build reserves and companies pour billions into the asset. With soaring prices and unprecedented momentum, Bitcoin's role in the financial system is becoming undeniable. At the same time, sharp corrections remain part of its DNA, testing conviction and filtering out weak hands. As it edges closer to $100,000, the digital asset is no longer just an alternative, it's becoming a cornerstone of the modern economic landscape. Could widespread corporate and sovereign adoption of Bitcoin redefine the future of global finance? The Bitcoin revolution is just getting started. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this with fellow investors, and subscribe to stay ahead of every major move.